So what we see here is that same project that we've been working on in the previous modules. Currently, we're just returning hello world for every single request that comes in. But what if we wanted to go ahead and actually look at the request path and give different responses for different paths? Well, we could go ahead and just put if statements or a switch statement in there, looking at the IO and context.request.path. But to be perfectly honest, that would be ridiculously tedious work if you wanted to have a big web application. So I think we should just skip that idea. Luckily, there are quite a few people out there that have already built frameworks around this specific problem. In this case, I'm going to turn to a framework called NancyFx. So let's just open the package manager console and install that NuGet package. And since we're doing Nancy inside of OWIN, the package we want is nancy.owin. I'm not going to do a whole walkthrough of how Nancy works. There are other courses that will cover that subject. But the basic idea is that you create Nancy modules, and inside of those modules you define what paths they should respond to. So I'm just going to create a directory called modules where I can put my NancyFx modules. Okay, now that I've got my directory, I'm just going to create a class in here, and I'm going to call it Nancy demo module. The first thing I need to do inside of my new CS file is add a couple of using statements. The first one is Nancy, and since I'm going to be doing OWIN based stuff, I'm going to use the nancy.owin as well. To turn my Nancy demo module into a proper Nancy module, I have to make sure that my class inherits from Nancy module. Now that I've got that inheritance in place, I can go ahead and create my constructor. And inside that constructor, I can register the first path I want to handle. So the way that I do that is that inside the Nancy module base class, there's a dictionary for each one of the HTTP verbs. In this case, I want to register a path for the get verb. So I use the get dictionary, and I add the path that I want to handle as the key, and I pass in a delegate as the value. This delegate will then be called every time there's a get request with a path that corresponds to the key in the get dictionary. Nancy can obviously handle way more complicated paths than this, but this is everything I need for now. So what do you put inside of the delegate? Well, you can put whatever code you want, and whatever you return from the delegate is what's going to be sent back to the client. In this case, I just want to return a simple message, but I want to include the requested path, and I want to read that from the OWIN environment dictionary. So to do that, I'm going to get hold of the environment dictionary using an extension method called getOwinEnvironment on the context property. Once I got my environment dictionary, I can just go ahead and return my message. In this case, I'm just going to return hello from Nancy, and then add you requested and append the request path using the environment dictionary and the key owin.requestPath. So that's a fully working Nancy module that we can hopefully just plug into the OWIN pipeline and get working. So let's head over to the startup class and add Nancy to our pipeline. So I still want the request to flow through the debug middleware, but I want to make sure to intercept it before it reaches the hello world middleware. So I need to add it in between those two middlewares. And since Nancy is following the pattern we saw in the last module on how to build middlewares, adding Nancy is just a matter of calling use Nancy on the IApp builder. The cool thing with Nancy is that we don't even have to configure it. It will just go through our project and find any class that inherits from Nancy module and add it to its configuration. So I'm just going to press F5 and see what happens. Okay, so I'm going to come back to why we're getting a 404 here, but let's first go over to /Nancy and see if our module is responding as it should. And it definitely is. We're getting the hello from Nancy, you requested, and then /Nancy/.